Hello, class. Welcome back to Intro to Visual Art. This is the review for week three, um, last week, and we'll be talking about chapters 3 and chapter 4 in this review, and then we will be talking about the quiz. So we started off talking about light and what light is. Light is energy. Uh, and light is what we perceive with our eyes. That's part of the visual spectrum. Value is every color has a value, but value really is talking about degrees of white or black. So values, uh, high values are white, and low values move towards black. Contrast is the degree of difference between white and black, or between two colors. So in this painting, we have a high contrast between the outside square, the white, and then the darkest square. That is a high contrast. But low contrast means that there's not much difference between the two values. So we have these two squares are particularly close together in value. This is low contrast. Value pattern is the way in which value is organized in an artwork. So what we're looking at here is an artwork that's divided by two, left side and right side, and the right side is all low value, or low value and low contrast. It's low value because it's sort of darker. It's lower value because it's darker, but more importantly, it's low contrast because the lights and the darks, there's not much of a difference between the lightest lights and the darkest darks. But on the left side, this is a high contrast image, and we have a greater difference between the lights and the darks. The lightest light is almost white, and the darkest dark is just about black. So that in itself is high contrast. So our value pattern, if you're to describe the value pattern in its simplest terms, is that the artwork is divided into left side and right side. On the right side is a low contrast value pattern. And then on the left side is a high contrast value pattern. And then you can go farther in depth saying that the on the left side we have a higher contrast on the bottom side of the image where the land is and the rocks and the people. It's generally darker, and then it's much lighter up here. It's a higher value up here and a lower value down here. Chiaroscuro, it's a funny word that I like to talk about. Ultimately won't affect you very much in this class, though you may choose to use the word when you're describing artwork. Chiaroscuro is an effect in artwork where there is an emphasis on light and dark, and there is usually very light lights and very dark darks, and often the figures, especially in paintings such as this, or objects, are really sort of have this harsh light on them, but they're mostly in shadow. Then we talked about color. We have additive color. Additive color is created by mixing light together, so that's like your computer screen that you're looking at. So we have red, green, and blue. Together, those make white. Additive color. Subtractive color is more like mixing paint or the dots on a newspaper, where one color subtracts other colors from the spectrum. So mixing paint subtractive color, subtractive color. These are the dots in a magazine. All right, the color wheel. This is important. Make sure you understand the color wheel. We have our primary hues. Hue is a fancy word for color. Remember that. It's okay to just say color, but if you come across the word hue, that it means color. Primary hues or primary colors are yellow, red, and blue. Those are colors that just simply exist, and we cannot mix the colors, but because they are the foundation of all the color that we see, especially in, say, paint. So we have yellow, red, and blue. Those are primary colors. Secondary colors are halfway between our primary, each primary color. So the secondary colors between blue and red are violet. Between blue and yellow are green. Between yellow and red are orange. Tertiary colors are halfway between our primary and secondary colors. For example, yellow-orange, red-orange, orange-violet, blue-violet, blue-green, and yellow-green. Those are all examples of tertiary colors. Analogous colors. Select any tile on the color wheel, and the colors and the tiles particularly next to it are part of that color's family. So this image shows colors analogous to red. We have red here, our primary color, and we have red, violet, and violet. You cannot make violet without using red. Red is part of it. And then the other way we have red, orange, and orange. Again, you cannot make orange without using red. These are all part of the red family. You can select any tile on the color wheel, and you can even have colors that are analogous to green. They don't have to be primary colors. So you can have green, yellow, because yellow makes up green. And then going the other way, you have green, blue-green, and blue, because blue makes up green. These are all families of colors, and they're referred to as analogous colors. If you were to take a two-sided arrow and spin it inside the color wheel, it'll point opposite the side, at opposite colors, and these opposite sides are called complementary colors. So complementary of violet is yellow. Complementary of red is green. Those are complementary colors. Think of your sports teams. You have the LA Lakers. You have violet and yellow make the LA Lakers. The Chicago Bears. You have orange and blue. Complementary colors are used in graphic design often. This image really shows the difference between value, which is white to black, and then what's called saturation, which is a lot of color to no color at all. You can have saturated colors that have any level of value to them, high, medium, or low. Cool colors are purple and blue and green. They make you feel cool, physically feel cool. Warm colors like red and yellow and orange, those are your warm colors that make you feel physically warm. There's a local and optical color. Local is the actual color of an object. Optical color is the perceived color of the object. So in this image, we have three local colors. We have a purplish gray and a yellow, and then like just a general gray. So we know that, but we also know that this is a trick of the eye. So what we have here is optical color, where this local color, which is gray, actually looks like yellow. And over here, the same color, the optical color, is actually more like the violet. So that's the difference between local and optical color. Local is what the color actually is, and optical color is how we perceive the color in relationship to other colors. Arbitrary color does not accurately reflect visible reality. So that's when an artist uses whatever colors at hand in order to give whatever effect they wish to, but it doesn't represent life. Texture and pattern. Actual texture is texture you can touch, such as you can touch a rough sculpture, you can touch any object in the real world, but on a canvas, actual texture might only be touching the texture of the paint. So that thick paint is called impasto. Often the painting is smooth, and if the painting is smooth, this is actual texture in this sculpture. If the painting is smooth, you have visual texture. So visual texture is the simulation of texture. The woman's hair in this painting, the texture of the sweater, that is visual texture. Texture can represent reality or it can represent something else, such as in this painting. This isn't a reality, this is an effect, but the effect looks as though you can touch the texture. Subversive texture. Subversive texture can be in painting, it can be in photography, it can be in whatever. This is of course, a sculpture, but the idea of subversive texture is that it is gross. It leaves you feeling gross or icky inside. Subversive texture. Pattern. Pattern is any repetitious design. Something where you can expect, where you can predict the next element. That is a pattern. Another pattern with an actual texture. All right, that's the end of the review of chapters 3 and 4. Let's go on to last week's quiz. All right, so last week we were looking at this print by Andy Warhol. Let's go over the questions. I asked you to describe the value pattern of the artwork. What values are in the artwork and how is value organized within it? So the value pattern. So look at the color and then imagine that you're colorblind, or imagine that you're taking where you can only see black and white. Imagine that you're taking, or take like a black and white photograph of this artwork. What is left? And how is the painting or the image organized? Well, I see a grid. I see some darker values in most of the grids, but I would say that the darker values are in the bottom, say 2 rows. The top row isn't quite as dark in the value, or it is a higher value in the top row, is another way to say it. The contrast is much greater, I would say, in the bottom row. So in the bottom row or third of the painting, of the artwork, we have a higher contrast. That is how the value pattern is organized. Color pattern. So think about it in color, think about it as how you see it. How is the color organized in the artwork? Number 1, is the color saturated? I would say yes, it is saturated mostly. The reds are maybe a little less saturated, but it's mostly saturated. Are we using analogous or complementary colors? Well, And is it warm? Well, I'd say it feels very warm because of the amounts of reds and yellows. It feels very warm, though of course there are some cooler colors in there. Uh, I would say that the colors are not particularly complementary. I mean, if the colors were complementary with this red, we'd be seeing a lot of green. I would describe the colors more as arbitrary colors. They're warm, they are arbitrary, and uh, and saturated, and the artwork is organized pretty evenly with warm, saturated, arbitrary colors across the whole thing. Describe the texture of the artwork. I would describe the texture of the artwork to be visual because I see texture, but if I were to touch it, I would not be able to feel the texture. Is there a discernible pattern in the artwork? And describe it. Well, yes, there is a pattern. We have a grid, and we have a grid of sort of alternating arbitrary colors, and it's mostly red. Or red is the only sort of trend in each of them. So that is the pattern. The subject matter of the artwork. Well, what is the subject matter of the artwork? That is, to answer this question correctly, you would be thinking back to the second week lecture where we were talking about chapters 1 and 2. So the subject matter of the pattern is what do we see in the artwork? The subject matter of the artwork is what we see in the artwork. So we see this a figure, the same figure, sort of a portrait, the same portrait, and we see it 9 times. We see in the portrait we see that there is a hand on the mouth, and thinking about the iconography, what does it mean to have the hand on the mouth and the way he has it? It looks to me that the portrait of the person, he is thinking, or he is sort of being wise or thoughtful. So a wise, thoughtful person looking to the viewer 9 times. And then the last question is, have you seen the Art of the Day assignment? And I asked you to pull it up on your computer and tell me which artist you are to be researching. Also, what the subject matter you should be concentrating is for each artist. So whether it be printmaking, painting, sculpture, or whatever. I want to remind you that your Art of the Day assignment is due next week. So if you haven't started your research on it, get started because it is coming up. And I'll be responding to each of you personally to affirm that your Art of the Day assignment is that you understand which artist and also when it is due. That is it for the review from last week. Hopefully you did well on it. Go ahead and watch the lectures for chapters 5 and chapter 6.